County Board of Education's first meeting of the Budget and Operations Committee, formerly named the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee for the Board of Education. I am joined by committee member Carolyn Boston, District 6, and committee member Sonia Williams, District 9. And joining us electronically is committee member Amit from District 5 and appointed at-large member Curtis Valentine. Okay, with that, I'll open up the meeting at 4:11. We're trying something new this year, committee members, where we're going to be recording the Budget and Operations Committee meeting, and they're going to be uploaded online for the public to see. I think this is a very transparent way for our community to see the work of this very important committee. And I hope that you all welcome that, and we can have attendance here so everyone can see our bright, shiny faces. With that, I'm going to ask that a member of the committee please move approval of today's agenda. Have a second? Okay,
Second.
been moved by Boston, second by Williams to approve today's agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, we have an agenda. Colleagues, may I have a motion to approve the June 12th, 2018 committee meeting minutes of the formerly named Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee meeting?
So moved.
It's been moved. Have a second? It's moved and properly seconded to approve the meeting minutes from June 12th, 2018. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any nays? Ayes have it. And one abstention from committee member Amit. All righty, colleagues, I'm going to move over in any opening remarks from the committee vice chair, Mr. Valentine. I'll open the floor to him.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to working with everybody under the watchful leadership of my colleague and champion for children, Brother Wallace. And so this is an exciting year, an important year, a turning point in our school system. And this committee is going to have a very big part in that. So I look forward to working with you all and look forward to a great year.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. And committee members, if we could speak directly into the microphone so that those who are on the Zoom conference call can hear us clearly, it'd be greatly appreciated. First, we're going to move on to discussion item 2.01, which is the review of the committee charter. Colleagues, as you know, the board unanimously passed board policy 8100 last school year, which did a full reorganization of all of the board's standing and ad hoc committees, including this one. Under the new board policy, this committee is charged with overseeing, I would say, double the amount of departments that we did have oversight of last year. Under the new policy, the Budget and Operations Committee is charged with reviewing the proposed operating budget, the reconciliation budget, if applicable, and to provide a recommendation to the full board prior to its adoption, the review of financial statements provided to the board monthly, review of the budget alignment, realignment, and transfer requests provided monthly, and specifically show how the modifications reflect on the previously approved budget. And we also will ensure that the board summary statements are complete and that appropriate attachments are provided. We would ensure equity in all budgetary, contractual, and operational matters, including the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program, while recognizing priority needs in the school district, as well as monitor corrective action plans consistent with audit findings and recommendations. The interim CEO, has appointed a few administrative leads And at this time, I'm going to yield over to the administrative leads. One is present with us today. Of course, we're always joined by our board internal auditor, Ms. Winston, but I'm going to yield over to the administration to have our new chief financial officer introduce himself.
Thank you. Mike Herbstman, the new chief financial officer. I've been here about 3 weeks now, and things have been going well. I am originally from Northern Illinois, outside of Chicago. I've worked in government finance for most of my career, starting with the Chicago Public Schools in their budget office, and then moving on to work on finance and operations in their special education office. Following that, I was at Cook County, where I worked in the emergency management department as a finance director. I came over to this area a few years ago, and I have been working in Alexandria as first their budget director and then chief financial officer over the last couple of years. And as I said, I just joined here a few weeks ago, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Welcome to Prince George's County. And we look forward to working with you and partnering with you and on this year's budget and many other fiscal matters. And then at this time, I'm going to yield over to the rock star of internal audit, Ms. Michelle Winston, to introduce herself to the committee and to the public.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Michelle Winston. I am the Director of Internal Audit. I've been with the Prince George's County Public School system. Just looked at the calendar today, realizing that it will be 20 years in November, and having spent all of that time in internal audit, first as audit supervisor, and last 7 years as director. It's my pleasure to work with the committee.
It's our pleasure as well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And colleagues, this committee is charged with overseeing business management services, human resources and talent development, information technology, pupil accounting, school boundaries, and the CIP, as well as supporting services. So I would say last year we were mostly focused on our operational and capital improvement budget and internal audit. Now we have a larger scope, and with that we will have some more representation from the administration. So if there are any topics at all that committee members would like deeper representation from the administration, just let the vice chair or me know, and we can make sure that that appropriate staff member is available at the next committee meeting. The board Budget and Operations Committee is also supported by Ms. Aisha Berkeley, who is going to be my right-hand woman in all of this. So I thank you ahead of time, Ms. Berkeley. Okay, colleagues, moving on to agenda item 2.02, which is the review of the draft committee work plan. Colleagues, on your desk, and it's also, I believe it's available on board docs, is going to be the draft work plan for 2018-2019. Doing so in review, take a few moments to review, and if any changes at all, you can bring them up at this time. While you review, I would like to bring to your attention a systematic request that for the months of November, December, January, and February, that we look to meet as a committee twice a month, because those are the crucial months for the operating budget before it hits the full board and the county government. So in your review, take a few moments. If there are any changes or any particular topics that you think we need to discuss, any particular administrative leaders that you think we should invite, now is the time to let us know, and we'll make those edits.
Mr. Chairman, may I? After Ms. Williams.
No, you're first, Ms. Hammond.
Thank you. As I was looking through this work plan, I really appreciate the fact that we're discussing the things that we need to discuss. My issue, for example, internal audit, making sure that we're aligned that with whatever the budgetary needs are at the time, during the specific months. I appreciate the fact that we're going out into the community or making sure that the community is more involved in the discussions that we have. All those things are really great and I think reflective of this work plan. What I'm concerned about is that I feel this committee has a real opportunity to own some specific key topics and issues that have been concerns of board members and our board as a whole. I'm thinking of things like public-private partnerships has been an ongoing conversation, but I don't see that reflected in our work plan. I'm thinking of the capital budget specifically and procurement and some of the things that are going on in the state that have key budgetary impact, like the Kirwan Commission and the 21st Century Work Group. My thought is that all of those things should be somehow reflected in this work plan and either designed in or we have a space to speak about those either pending issues, upcoming issues, or just issues that we want to take ownership of and say, this is something that we want to, by the end of this year, reform. And I don't see that vision for specific issues or topics in this.
Could you list, Mrs. Ahmed, could you list those topics one more time? I have CIP budget, Kirwan Commission, procurement, and what were the other ones?
Procurement, public-private partnerships, the Kirwan Commission, I think you mentioned, the 21st Century Work Group that they're doing on the state. Those are just a couple of things. I would also maybe add the process by which we budget. I think having our new chief on board, it would be really good to review and revise the way that we've been doing budgeting. Also with Dr. Golson in place, just review to see if the way that we've been historically doing budgeting is the way that we want to continue doing budgeting, and maybe explore other avenues and options on how and what that could look like. I also think we might have a new, platform by which we're doing budgeting. Didn't we put, I think, a specific amount in to get a specific technology to help us with budgeting? So maybe reviewing that or making sure that we're on par with that. Is that useful? That kind of a thing. Sorry, that was a lot in one go.
No, I thank you for your comments, and they are so noted. And while other committee members speak about their reviews and any edits, just let me know any particular months that you would like those topics to be discussed, and I'll add them, and then we'll make a final vote. Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Chair. I like the fact that we have a broader scope here at the committee that focuses on the budget. And with that said, I agree with Board Member Ahmed that procurement would be a good department to come. And to address some of the issues that Board Member Ahmed brought up, 3 of them directly relate to CIP. And so maybe if we, group those together and discuss CIP with the subset to public-private partnership, the 21st Century development, and there was another that also falls under CIP. So I think grouping those together under CIP, we could handle those as one group versus, dedicating 3 separate meetings with our limited time that we have. No. CIP and the 21st Century Development, both of those are directly related to buildings and facilities. And I think there was one other that also. So public-private partnership and the 21st Century. Yes, both of those are directly related to CIP and what they do in our Capitals Program office. We are having procurement come as a work session later on in the year. So as far as where it should fit on on the schedule. I'm not sure if we want to have it just before, that might be ideal, or just after, to maybe follow up with some information. But if we coordinate it with that work session, which will be in the spring, then we can, better use our time more effectively.
Mrs. Williams, I believe that work session might be on March 7th. I have a 5 o'clock work session scheduled for the board, and maybe we can have our committee meeting in March on the 12th be right after that work session. But I have to confirm with the board office if that work session is dedicated to that. Any other thoughts, colleagues on the committee, about the work plan? So right now I have tentatively for the March 12th committee meeting, it's going to be focused primarily on capital improvement budget, a review of the State Commission on the 21st Century School Construction, and the public-private partnership process for Prince George's County Public Schools. And then, Ms. Williams, is there a particular date that you would like the procurement department to come before us? I'm assuming as soon as possible.
So, the sooner the better, I think would be, and maybe if we do it prior to us jumping into the budget discussions, maybe maybe in our November meeting, maybe one of our 2 November meetings.
So noted. And colleagues, I would ask that during the crucial months of the November, December, January, February, that in those 2 meetings a month, have a little flexibility on the particular items that we talk about. Some meetings may run the full 2 hours, some may run an hour, depending on the administrative timeline and how we can best get information back and forth to them regarding board member requests, committee requests, and priorities on the budget. As a side note, taking off my chair hat, colleagues, I would hope that we could find some time in looking and having a conversation around our supporting services. I know a lot of times we may have folks from the community, certainly staff members, who have questions about professional development, talent development, human resources, recruiting. And I know we have a new chief of human resources that I had a wonderful brief meeting with before the committee meeting started today. And she was eager to get before us as a committee and share her thoughts and initiatives and how she can benefit that whole division. I want to know if we can find some time in this work plan to schedule her to have a meeting with us and a presentation before the board committee, as well as having some time to have kind of our fixed operations, security, food, nutrition, transportation, maintenance, of course, is a huge initiative that a lot of our colleagues, not only on this committee, but the full board, are taking a very serious look at. And so we can find some time to have those on our agenda, on our work plan. I would love that. I would love that. Supporting services.
Chair Wallace?
Yes, ma'am.
One other thing that the budget committee would lead or get involved in is the direction or timing of our budget meetings to include the public. With this committee, will we be involved in coordinating that also?
Absolutely. We are tasked with selecting the locations for our budget work sessions and budget public hearings that come in the spring, late winter. And I believe that's actually on our agenda for the next meeting coming up. Yes, in November 15th, we'll be discussing the locations for the FY 2020 budget work sessions and public hearings. So colleagues on the committee, if there are any particular schools or any particular areas that you would like for us to meet in, certainly open to that. And just take a quick review of any your particular districts or any particular areas in the county that you think that the Board of Education needs to visit, that sometimes may get overlooked from us going to the same couple of schools every year. Okay. Colleagues, were there any other thoughts on the draft work plan? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the 2018-2019 Budget and Operations Committee work plan.
So moved as amended.
It's been moved that there are any amendments added. I have a second.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Would this approval incorporate the comments for topics to add?
Yes. So, Ms. Ammon, the topics around CIP, 21st Century Commission, and the public-private partnerships were added to the March 12th, 2019 meeting. On your work plan, it says meeting 7. That number is slated to change with the scheduling of twice-a-month meetings in those crucial months. And procurement was added to the November 15th meeting as a request from Ms. Williams as soon as possible.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
No problem. I have a second on the motion for Ms. Williams. It's been moved and properly second to approve the work plan for the 2018-2019 year for the Budget and Operations Committee as amended. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
All right. It's unanimous passage. Thank you, colleagues. We're going to move on to item 2.03, and we're going to yield the floor to Director Winston on the internal audit plan and fiscal year end review.
Good afternoon to the committee. My presentation to you this afternoon is the internal audit report on the annual audit plan for FY19. This was forwarded in the form of a combined report, which a combined report which included the annual report for FY19 and as well as the audit plan, and also included the final report for FY18 as of June 30th, 2018. So our accomplishments for FY18 included conducting and issuing audit reports for 97 total financial, operational, and as well as fraud audits. We received a total of 309 hotline report submissions for that period as also, and that was by call, mail, and other notifications. 61 property inventory assessments were conducted. A total of $32 million in assets were subjected to our audit activities as a result of our audit reporting. 36, and as a result of performing our audits and investigations and property assessments, we estimate that a total losses of $16 million were averted. Actual losses that were identified were approximately $1.8 million and of that, $27,000 was recovered by June 30th, 2018.
Ms. Winston,
Yes.
would you prefer to have questions at the end or throughout the conversation is okay?
Could we hold the questions to the end, if that's
Sure.
okay? Thank you. So the status of our planned activities for FY18, every year we present a plan of audit activities, and this includes what we think that we will accomplish in terms of looking at student activity funds, looking at operational audits, and also our best guess for investigations, as well as what operational audits we expect to conduct. And for those that were planned, the ones that were completed included data analytics, which were our student activity funds, and supplemental payroll payments. Then we had some special requests. These are our unplanned activities, and that included the human resources salary increase audit and the bus lot transportation payroll operations, which was also a special request. And then finally, because we have unplanned activities, we ended up having to move some of our FY18 planned activities to FY19. And those include the Employee Labor Relations Office, printing services, some follow-up on our operational audits, Blackboard Connect IT audit, Identity and Access Management audit, and ESOP system. The last three of those are IT audits, and during most of FY18, we weren't able to accomplish those because that was a vacant position. We finally have been successful in getting someone to fill that position. So the next slide shows our hotline and investigation, and as I said previously, there were 309 hotline reports received. And this just shows some general statistics and some comparative numbers for FY 2017 and 2018. For 2017, you'll note that there were 210 calls received versus FY 18, where there were 309. So virtually a 100, almost 100 increase in calls there. And our next slide here, what this is a comparative analysis that speaks to our student activity fund audits. A significant part of our time is spent out at schools looking at student activity funds. And so this chart here is showing you probably our most frequent audits and also giving you a comparison of FY17 and FY18, and I think that you'll see that the top most repeated are management of disbursements and management of funds received. Property assessment activities, our property auditors perform physical inventory of schools, and that was performed for 61 schools and locations in FY18. And as a result of those activities, our total loss was initially approximately $3.8 million, for 6,412 assets. And through our additional follow-up activities, we identified $2.7 million for 4,817 assets, and finally ended up with unidentified assets of 1,595 assets, costing $1.1 million for FY18. And it's ongoing. What happens a lot of times with our property is sometimes in our asset management system, it may be misidentified in terms of location. I will say that a lot of this amount had to do with the TDC that has since been closed at Fairmont Heights. So our audit plan for FY 2019, looking forward now, and just some disclaimers, some information about how I developed the plan. It is based on our staffing of 7 financial auditors. There's 1 audit supervisor, one IT auditor, 1 investigative auditor, and 3 property assessment technicians. My time, the time of the business analysts are not factored into the plan. The hours are estimated, and we always expect that we're going to complete all of our activities, but as you can see from looking at FY18 results, it's sometimes impacted by special requests and other activities that sometimes are considered more of a priority. So some of our major areas that I plan to review this year, 900 hours for school activity fund audits, some data analytics also on that. That kind of helps us to direct our resources a little bit better focused there. Hotline and special investigations, 2,800 hours. Property inventories, approximately 4,000 hours. Any special requests, I budget about 400 hours. Administrative and supervisory, this is the supervisor's time spent performing quality review and as well as time spent issuing and editing reports. Continuing education, all of our auditors are required to obtain 40 total hours, continuing professional education hours, and that's in order to conduct our audits in accordance with government auditing standards, which all of our audits are conducted in accordance. Operational audits. Some of these you'll see from the previous slide, but the plan is that we will spend 600 hours on following up on some prior operational audits, and that includes the student records, contractual services, and capital programs audits that have been done previously. Probably FY17 or so was when we conducted those audits. Employee Labor Relations Office, fingerprinting services, printing services, expanded salary review, and specialty programs lottery. Technology or IT audits, we plan to conduct the Blackboard Connect, ESOP, which is the Substitute Management System, lottery program system. This would be the technology portion, looking at the actual lottery system, whereas before we look at the operation as well. So these would be done in conjunction with each other. Follow up on PII, that's personally identifiable information. I believe it was in 2016 or so when we did a full operational audit where we looked at how we secure our data. And wire and electronic funds transfers, 300 hours. So the other thing that's new for internal audit for FY 2019 is that we have selected an automated audit work paper solution by a contractor by the name of Audit Board, which is a cloud-based solution that has been customized for PGCPS internal audit processes. We have just begun using that, and so far we like it a lot. And then number 2, we expect to have a new hire soon to replace a retired property audit technician, and we expect that that person will begin November of 2018. And that concludes my report. I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Madam Director. And I'm going to open up the floor first. Committee Member Ammett, you had some questions?
How did you know? Yes, Ms. Winston. My first question is: do the hotline calls deal with employee harassment, and if so, what are done with those cases?
So, Ms. Ahmed, the hotline calls, they run the gamut. And as you know, it's a 24/7 available hotline around the clock, and it's available to anyone, students, parents, staff, community members. So I get a variety of hotline calls. But yes, I have gotten calls where there are allegations of harassments, and those calls are forwarded to our EEO advisor.
You said forwarded to ELRO?
Usually I'll forward them to the EEO advisor, Ms. Simmons.
And then my next question is, where are these our figures coming from for fiscal year 2019? Are they based off of the number of hours that you spent on these specific items this year? I ask because when I look at it, I personally, I think there should be an emphasis, more of an emphasis on hotline and special investigations over maybe property inventories. If there are people calling and saying, we have these issues, or I'm noticing this, then maybe those things should have a significant number of hours, which, or maybe more than some other areas. I wonder where these numbers are coming from. Could you enlighten me?
Sure. So, and I heard a couple of things in your questions. So with our hours, again, these are estimates. And generally, how I select the operational audit activities is we conduct a risk assessment, and what's included in a risk assessment is, our judgment in terms of we go out and we talk to the process owners, the managers, and we ask them what do they think are their risks to accomplishing their objectives, and based on that feedback, we select certain activities where we will spend our time. And in terms of the hours that are spent for the property inventories, within internal audit, we have financial auditors, we have property auditors, IT, we have the investigators. So the property auditors don't have the expertise to perform financial audits, operations, or even investigations. So in essence, I really only have 8 people that are available to conduct student activity fund audits, investigations, and operational audits.
Okay, so this is not, just to repeat back, this is not necessarily based on numbers that were allocated or actually spent on these different topics this year. Rather, it is based upon submissions from folks on what they believe is needed to be able to complete the work done in those specific areas.
Yeah, based on their feedback, and then my best estimate as far as what would be required to complete a sufficient audit, and the number of people I might place on the audit for staffing, and everything from planning to conducting the audit to reporting.
Okay, I think I'm not sure if this is going to go to the full board in a separate conversation or not, but I think what might be helpful is seeing those actual numbers from this year, or whatever is you currently have, just to be able to provide a frame of reference. But yeah, that would be my comment, my suggestion there, if this is something that's going to be presented again. And then my last question is where is the gap when you were investigating all these property losses? What is the gap that has been identified on how that happened? To me, that's $1 million. That's a lot of money for us to be to not know where those assets are. I thank you for the savings that you've been able to provide, but I just wonder, in your investigations or your assessments, what have you found is the gap?
So I would say probably the largest gap is that because we have movable assets, if you will. A lot of the assets that we are trying to track are assets that include tablets, laptops. These are assets that employees can take home. Students, we have programs where students can use these tablets and for homework purposes, what have you. And so there's supposed to be a documentation trail to, there's an agreement to say I have an agreement that I can take my laptop home. So if we go into a school, an employee's laptop is not there, well, we should see the agreement there and that's satisfied. So often there's that gap where that documentation is not there. And what sometimes happens is when you have a staff member that might have moved from one school to another, that actual physical document did not follow them. So that's a lot of times what we see most of the time as to why we can't actually track where the asset is. And that's why a lot of times it's ongoing. We'll find it later on. So the next time we'll go to another school, we may find the asset that we were looking at the previous school, with now that teacher has moved on.
Have you provided suggestions or recommendations to administration on how to bridge that gap?
We have. We work closely with the CIO's team. They are the ones who are in charge of the technology distribution centers. And we've been working closely. They're doing some of their own audits now to try to identify some of the gaps, as you said, in order to so that we will have better results from our audits when we go out and perform property inventories.
Are they scheduled to provide you an action plan of sorts?
They are.
Okay, I think that colleagues, I think we should be on top of whatever responses received and see if there's any action needed from us to help bridge that gap moving forward. That's all.
Thank you, Committee Member Hammond. Next up, I have Committee Member Williams, followed by Mrs. Boston.
Thank you, Chair. To follow up on Board Member Ahmed's question regarding the losses, we have $1.8 million was identified as a loss, and you recovered $27,000. Included in that $1.8 million, is that what we're showing in on slide, the property assessment activity slide, where we have a total of $1.15 million that could not be located? Is that included in that $1.8 million?
It is.
Okay, so we're looking at probably $650,000 of other items.
Yes.
Chairs, desk, things that are just maybe mislabeled or whatever.
Those are probably things from other audits. It could have been the salaries.
Oh, okay. The salaries.
The
okay.
various audits that we've done throughout FY18.
Okay. Okay.
But the lion's share is the
property. Is that property piece. Okay. And so it probably would be helpful, and maybe we can get this in a follow-up at our next meeting, a breakdown of the $1.8 million, just so that we can be clear as to where we're finding these losses and how we can probably track them going forward to see that there is a reduction or see that there is, what areas we need to address when we're looking at following up with the administration and reducing the losses. Because I think it's very important that with the $2 billion budget, there will be some loss, but we want to keep it to a minimum. My next question is regarding the work plan, the audit work plan. We have, in your work plan, the hours that you show, is that 100% of the hours that are available based on your staff? If we were to sum total the hours, would that be 100% of your hours, including vacation time and things like that?
So what I included in my presentation were the most significant hours, but in total, for all total staff available hours are 27,040.
Okay.
And once you consider time taken for leave, meetings, what have you, then the available working hours would be 20,420.
Okay. And so in that 27,000, do you set aside time for some of these special requests or unplanned audits that would take a lot of time? Do you have that included in your, because I saw something that said 400 hours for special requests.
I've set aside 400 hours, and it depends. Last year we had a significantly more special requests than we normally have. So usually that's a more manageable number. So so again, in my judgment, I'm thinking maybe this year there won't be as many. So that's again, these numbers are my best estimates.
So that's good to know that the 400 hours is set aside for that. But when you break down the hours that are available, for example, your school activity fund audit, data analytics, you're just setting that out, those hours up.
Yes.
Out, and then your staff, do they on their timesheet sort of charge against those hours so that
they
you can
do. They are expected to track their hours in terms of how much time that it's supposed to spend, and they are also given a budget for how much they are expected to spend. And so these same hours, like for the individual operational, is how much time they would be given for budget. So they would not be expected to exceed
that. Okay. So when we talk about the comparison, and I'm just using this page because you have it broken down, the comparison for the top financial audits, those are what you do every day on a regular basis when you go out to the schools and you look at the after school funds and the funds for the principal. That's what's included.
Yeah, that's what these are student activity fund audits, yes.
Okay. But if something were to come up from, let's say, a hotline call that would fall into that category, you would pull it out of that budgeted amount.
Yes, yes. And sometimes, and it goes both ways. Sometimes you can be doing just a regular student activity fund audit, and then something will come to your attention that requires further investigation. And usually those would be done as two separate reports. So it would come from the separate budget alignments.
Okay. And I think I had one other question. Looking at the hotline investigations is probably just a comment. It seems like we're paying more attention to there has been an uptick in both the health and safety and healthcare compliance. A lot. It seems like that has been an increase compared to last year. And maybe it's due to the fact that we're focusing on the mold and school conditions and things like that we're working through. So who knows what will pop up this year.
Sure.
That's
And
new.
sometimes, and oftentimes, you won't just get one call about, let's say, if it's a mold issue. You'll get several calls about that same issue from the same, but it will all be accounted in that number.
In that number. Okay. That's all that I have. Thank you, Ms. Whiston.
You're welcome.
All righty, moving on. Vice Chair Valentine, do you have any questions from Ms. Winston's report?
I don't, but I do appreciate all the work that's being done. And if I do have any questions, I hope I can be able to send them to you in email.
Absolutely.
And then my only question, Ms. Winston, was, and I thank you so much for keeping the full board updated and abreast about any internal audit reports that come from the schools. Sometimes, well, all the times I read them, and sometimes I see that the principals sometimes have not submitted an action plan or a response. What does the, I guess, the professional development or any type of discipline for those who are charged with responding to your very thorough reports, but they don't seem to give a timely or sufficient response? Is there any type of corrective discipline or outreach from their instructional director? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Wallace, we have seen a marked improvement in the response time. I really can't say that in the past, I would say 6 months, I've really had to even, request, follow up from the IDs or associate superintendents or anything of that nature. So in terms of ensuring that they get the responses to me, I assume that must be happening at that level. So I mean, I honestly had not had to really get involved in, which I'm pleased to report.
And I'm pleased to hear. Okay. All right, colleagues, is there any request for round 2 for this report? Ms. Williams?
What is, you used an acronym that I wasn't familiar with, TDC?
Technology Distribution Center.
All right, colleagues, we're on round 2. Ms. Ammett, do you have anything for round 2? All right, hearing none. We're going to move on to agenda item number 3.01, which is just a request publicly for all board members to submit the recommended budget priorities. The board office has sent out a Google Doc link that is still live for you to submit your top 5 priorities. In previous years, we've had folks rank a list of about 24 topics, and then we found that to be kind of mundane, I would say. And now we're going to open it up and broaden it up. So if you have any particular specific topical area or any particular department that you would like this committee to prioritize, you can do so. Now, prioritize doesn't mean add more money to. Sometimes you want to look at a particular department and have them come testify and see what the allocation from the previous years has alluded to in the terms of their work. Then we can certainly prioritize and have them come before us. I'll open the floor up now to board members on the committee for any committee-based priorities. Each committee chair is charged with submitting priorities as well, and doing so in true fashion. The committee priorities that this committee will have will not come from me, but will come from the members. So I open the floor up to members. Are there any particular FY 2020 budget priorities that you would like for us to advocate for? Ms. Williams.
Should we, and this is just a question, should we take a look at, just for a review, the priorities that we suggested last year that were not funded, that we thought that were priorities for last year? The overall general budget, or do we want to start from scratch?
I believe this year we're starting from scratch. I know there's a new administration, in place, and it's going to, from what I hear, just kind of hitting the restart button. And I look forward to Dr. Golson's unveiling of her budget in mid-December. And my hope was that in sending out that Google Doc that board members could, if they wanted to, bring back the topics from the previous year, the previous couple of years that were not fully funded or funded at all, and they can express that, or the committee. I know that last year I chaired the Family and Community Engagement Committee, and there were a lot of things that were not fully funded on our end, so I'll be sure to personally bring those back up. But as far as this particular committee, it's open range.
And what's the deadline for the priorities to be submitted?
Friday, November 2nd, which is
you.
going to be right before the November 15th meeting, where we're currently tasked to review the feedback from that Google Doc from all board members. Any other thoughts, colleagues? You still have some time. All right, hearing none, I'm going to move on to item 3.02, next steps. So I want to thank my colleagues for approving the work plan. Next steps is going to be our meeting in November 15th, here in the Sasser Administration Building, where we will, one, review the recommended budget priorities from all of our colleagues and the committee chairs. We're also going to discuss the locations of the FY 2020 budget work sessions and public hearings. So colleagues, please do a little bit of homework and come back with a list of 3, 4, 5 schools that you would like for us to see if logistically they can hold and host the technologies and the board, the entire board, as well as the administrators that will be present, as well as the public that will be present. And then third, we will hear from external auditors about a presentation from Clifton Larson Allen, external audit firm. Okay. Seeing no further comments and nothing further on the agenda, I would ask for a motion.
One last thing, to make a note that between now and the November 15th meeting, you will be receiving some correspondence from me concerning a second meeting date in November. So look out for that so we can have that meeting planned for November.
Thank you so much. I ask for a motion to adjourn the committee meeting.
Moved.
It's been properly moved. May I have a second, please? All right, it's been properly moved and seconded to adjourn the Budget and Operations Committee at 5:08 p.m. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion has passed. Thank you all so much. And this video recording will be uploaded to YouTube, and then we're going to be working out the live stream process, so it will be live streamed in the future. Thank you all.
YouTube.